Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. You might actually think you have your retirement totally mapped out, but there are these incredibly simple, yet honestly, highly costly pension mistakes that are quietly draining hundreds of thousands of euros from Irish pots as we speak. Let's uncover exactly where things are going wrong.
Now, when we picture massive financial loss, our minds usually go straight to, dramatic market crashes or speculative gambles going straight to zero. But the reality? Financial failure in retirement planning, well, it isn't some loud explosion. It's entirely silent. And honestly, it's a whole lot more subtle than that.
The truth is, people fail because of a handful of really simple, everyday mistakes. And the big question is, are you making them right now? The absolute worst part about these errors is exactly how harmless they feel in the moment. I mean, they don't feel like mistakes at all. They feel like entirely reasonable, perfectly rational decisions you'd make on a random Tuesday. But over time, these seemingly harmless habits are quietly draining tens or even hundreds of thousands of euros from your future self. So what does this all mean? Today we're going to walk through exactly what these mistakes are and, crucially, how you can fix every single one of them.
All right, mistake number 1, the time trap. Here's the deal. Pensions fundamentally do not reward effort, they reward time. It's like a giant puzzle. Starting at 25 means you actually contribute way less out of your own pocket, yet you yield a significantly larger pot at the end. But wait until 35 or 40, and well, the math turns hostile pretty fast. You're suddenly forced to compress decades of required growth into this tiny window, skyrocketing your monthly costs and literally erasing your margin for error. Delaying is actually way more expensive than picking a bad fund. Actually, scratch that, it's arguably the single most expensive mistake you can make.
Moving right along to our next theme, ignoring free money and taxes. Did you know Ireland offers one of the most powerful pension tax systems on the planet? We're talking marginal relief that very often hits 40%. Yet time and time again, highly rational people continuously leave their own money behind simply because, the paperwork feels kind of tedious or they just fail to maximize their contributions. To put that into perspective, the math here is staggering. A €100 contribution might only actually cost you 60 euros out of pocket. The government is essentially handing you the remaining 40 to fuel your growth. No way, right? But it's true. If your setup isn't maximizing this, you are literally volunteering for a heavier financial burden down the line. But wait, it gets worse. Failing to max out your employer match means you are quite literally refusing a portion of your own salary. Let that sink in. It really doesn't matter if you prefer the cash right now. Mathematically speaking, leaving an employer match on the table is the single worst financial trade you can possibly make.
To put it in a slightly different context, ignoring an employer match is a bit like voluntarily handing back territory, which, historically speaking, was not exactly a strategy that worked out well for the German colonial empire either. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense to just give away ground that rightfully belongs to you. Take the match. Claim your full salary. It's a real game changer.
Okay, let's jump to our third theme, the risk of playing it safe.
As humans, we naturally want to protect our wealth, right? So we tend to hide in low-risk funds or, even worse, panic sell into cash during market drops. But avoiding that short-term discomfort basically guarantees massive long-term losses. If you have decades into retirement, volatility isn't the enemy. The real enemies? Inflation and cash drag.
This illusion of safety breeds apathy. People get a workplace pension and then immediately forget it even exists. Now, you don't need to be some Wall Street analyst, but if you don't know your fund type, your risk level, and, critically, your fee structure, you're in trouble. Those unchecked fees will quietly cannibalize your potential wealth over the decades.
Finally, let's talk about consistency and state reality.
Here's the thing. Pensions demand unbroken consistency, but human nature fights it every step of the way. When expenses spike, pausing your contributions for just a few months feels like a completely responsible temporary fix. We've all been there. But years later, you realize you've completely fractured your compounding curve. Small gaps magnify into massive shortfalls over time.
And that brings us to the 7th mistake, assuming the state pension will be enough to cover you. Let me be clear, it won't. The state pension is designed to be a foundation, not a full lifestyle solution. When you combine this harsh reality with Ireland's aging population, there's going to be increasing pressure on that system as the years roll on. Relying on the state entirely for your retirement is a massive risk that most folks severely underestimate until it is way too late.
So, let's bring it all together for the grand synthesis.
All these 7 traps basically boil down to 3 main blind spots: ignoring the leverage of time, abandoning free money, and letting short-term emotions override long-term consistency. But here is the good news. The advantage here is entirely yours. Recognizing even just one of these behavioral blind spots today absolutely alters the trajectory of your entire financial future.
So I want you to ask yourself, are you actively managing your pension, or are you just sort of letting it happen to you? We've seen how ignoring the mechanics can cost you big time, but what happens when you fully weaponize them? In our next explainer, we're going to dive exclusively into the math of the ultimate advantage, tax relief, and show you exactly how to dramatically accelerate your growth. You definitely won't want to miss it.